Ohio State, we are very, very fresh off of them winning a national championship. All right, Ryan Day gets the monkey off his back. This team accomplishes what we all thought they probably should accomplish at the beginning of the year when it comes to the roster. And so the game is one thing. If you want to get a reaction to the game, go check that out. It's already on the channel. Obviously, stay watching the show right now. But how did they actually get it done is, I think, where we should start. I'm not talking about the game. I'm talking about this entire season. And I mentioned Ryan Day a little bit leading into this thing. That's where I really want to hone in. As much as Ryan Day was criticized for all of the shortcomings for Ohio State, right now, as they just hoisted that national championship trophy, he better get his flowers. You better make sure that you understand Ryan Day is a massive part. I don't think Ryan Day, I'll say it another way, they don't win the national championship without Ryan Day as head coach. And it was interesting. Every year that they would come up short from winning the national championship, and the Michigan losses even this year, so much is made of that, and deservedly so because of the standard at Ohio State. But Ryan Day, the entire time, the reason why we kept buying stock in the guy, outside of the fact that he's got a ridiculous wins-to-loss record, he kept pushing the envelope. Like every single year, it was never a thing where you saw Ryan Day fail to meet the standard and then say, you know what, ball didn't bounce our way. Hey, you know what, it wasn't our day that day, so we're just going to do the same thing next year and run it back. And y'all, he had the opportunity to do that. Like I said this when it happened, like it takes real humility to pass the sticks at the part of the job as a head coach in college football where you're calling plays and saying, you know what, if we want to be better, I have to take a piece of humble pie and bring in a former coach of mine to call plays in Chip Kelly. Y'all, if you watched that game last night and if you watched Ohio State's playoff run this year, Chip Kelly was cooking. All right, he got into the Mary Poppins bag a little bit and was a massive reason as to why they won the national championship. Again, you don't bring Chip Kelly in without Ryan Day saying, hey, you know what, I'm passing off play calling. In addition to that, talk about the roster. They didn't need to get a new quarterback. Like Kyle McCord had the year he had at Syracuse. I promise he was doing things like that behind closed doors. I had someone tell me when Kyle McCord was still on the team with C.J. Stroud as a backup that Kyle McCord had the best arm on the team. Now, take of that whatever you want, but, I mean, the dude was, didn't he lead all of college football in passing this season? Like, it wasn't a thing where Kyle McCord didn't have some juice, and that's not a discussion I really want us to have right now, but to say, you know what, it wasn't good enough, whether it's a thing where we got to have some mobility or we just got to find a way to have different juice at quarterback, we bring in Will Howard. So that's the thing. Like, with this roster, they packed for success. They didn't know what it was going to require when they went on this national title trip. They didn't know if it was going to be a thing where, you know, you got to go beat two teams that were at different points in the season ranked number one. Didn't know if you had to play a team from the SEC with one of the better defensive lines in all of college football. You didn't know what it was going to take. So what do you do when you have no idea what the weather's going to be like when you're going somewhere? You pack for success. You pack a lot of things. Go get a new quarterback. You keep your talent on the defensive line home. You keep Trevion Henderson home. You go get a Quinshon Judkins from the SEC country, and he was massive last night with 3 touchdowns. Like, they packed for success. And, again, give Ryan Day a lot of credit for the way that they were able to not just pack for success, but make all those wardrobe pieces work together. That's the other part I want to say here. We talk a lot about leadership and how much that impacts a college football team, not just in terms of, like, you know, the play calling and the staff and all that. Like, your persona of your leadership is the persona of your football team. If you've watched this show for any length of time, that is a line that y'all know I harp on. Why? Because I believe it. Because I've seen it firsthand in locker rooms. If your coach is soft and your coach is sort of, you know, just to call a spade a beta of sorts, guess what? Your team plays like that. This team never played like that post-Michigan. And the Michigan conversation is one we'll have here in a moment and also throughout this live show. But, like, this wasn't a thing where Ohio State would get into these prize fights, especially in the playoff, and like, start to shrink back. And you'd say, well, JD, yeah, Ryan Day, I'm sure it plays a part in that, but, like, Jack Sawyer gets a lot of credit for that. JT Tuimoloau gets credit for that. The leadership within that locker room should get credit for that, right? Yeah, they absolutely should. Guess who's fostering that leadership? Guess who's feeding the machine? The guy who's overseeing your entire football team. So as much as you talk about the talent that Ohio State had, and as much as you talk about the $20 million roster, allegedly all those things, like, you still have got to have a guy to make it all go together, and you still have got to have a guy who is able to, quite frankly, change the DNA of your football team. Because, again, there were years now previously where Ohio State would get into those big-time spots against physical opponents, and they would come up short. Whether they would tighten up, whether they would fail to meet the challenge physically, whether they weren't prepared, whatever it was. I'm not saying it wasn't Ryan Day's fault in the moment, but credit Ryan Day for continuing to say, you know what, that's not okay, that's not the standard. I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to make some changes that might kind of hurt my ego a little bit, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. And again, they just won the national championship, so in terms of meeting that standard, it's not happening, okay?
The Hard Count presented to you today by Axia Time, the official timepiece of the college football playoff and the Heisman Trophy. And y'all have heard me now talking about these watches for a while. They've got some phenomenal designs, especially for the college football playoff. Now, as we head into the national championship game, Axia Time has new designs ready to be released for the winning team. All right, there'll be 3 ultra-custom designs with some surprises, one of those surprises being confetti from the post-game celebration in Atlanta. So, if you're a Notre Dame fan, an Ohio State fan, haven't yet bought one, might want to think about doing that because when you buy it, you'll still be able to lock in your savings and still qualify for the upgrade guarantee that includes all of the bells and whistles and surprises. So, check them out at axiatime.com. That's AXIAtime.com and use code HARDCOUNT at checkout to get 10% off your order.
Now, the take, and I've said this many times, but I just want to make sure this is out there for y'all. So I know we have a lot of people listening for the first time post-national championship. Welcome. Subscribe to the show. A lot was made about $20 million for Ohio State with their roster. There's a couple, I think, of misconceptions with that. The first is one that has been addressed by Kirk Herbstreit, which is, hey, it wasn't $20 million to go flip this thing over and get 20 new guys. It was $20 million to say, hey, you could go play in the NFL probably, maybe be I don't know what round draft pick, probably not a first-round pick, but like you could maybe help yourself by coming back. We're going to make it worth your while. All the guys I mentioned before, Tuimoloau, Henderson, Sawyer, all those guys. They kept them, okay, so that's huge. In addition now, they were kind of surgical in the portal, landing a Caleb Downs, landing a Will Howard, and landing a Quinshon Judkins. So the $20 million roster, yeah, you went to the portal, but it wasn't like $20 million was spent exclusively by adding new players via the portal. That's the first misconception. The second misconception, I believe, is I don't think Ohio State, with how just nuts, no pun intended, that fan base is going to sit here and say today, Cato, you know what, $20 million got us a national championship. I wonder if we could get away with $18 million. I wonder if maybe we could just cut the price tag a little bit and get ourselves some better Christmas presents. We could go $19 million. That'd be nice, right? That doesn't really strike me as their kind of vibe, man. They strike me as an operation that says, okay, if $20 million got us a national championship this year, what does $22 million get us next year? What does $24 million? Again, I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm not saying they win it every single year, but I am saying now this expectation that Ohio State is somehow going to not have a freaking dope roster, as good a roster as anybody else in college football here the next 5+ years, or as long as they have this kind of momentum under Ryan Day. I think that's probably a little bit irresponsible. Now, again, a lot of pieces came together this year. I'm not implying that somehow you're going to have the kind of leadership and veteran presence and all the things that worked how they worked for you this year. But I do think now we got to acknowledge, if it's about money and Ohio State's won a national championship, I don't think you're going to be dealing with less money here in the future. And salary cap is a salary cap, but like the boosters at Ohio State and the people that have checks they're writing, I think you're probably still more than willing to write that check. So I said we'd address it. We got to address it one more time. The Michigan game. It is what it is. Does it hurt? Totally. Is it ever okay to lose to Michigan? No. I mean, there's a lot of folks here at Media Days. We had one of our buddies, Trey Wallace, friend of the show, walking around interviewing fans at Media Days of Ohio State and saying, hey, would you rather win the national championship or would you rather beat Michigan? I mean, it wasn't like a resounding, unanimous, hey, win the national championship. Some of those folks, like, we'd much rather beat Michigan. And I don't think that's like them just saying that to say that because it sounds good ahead of the national title. I think they were saying that because that's genuinely how they feel about that game. And that's why we love college football, because the rivalries are so intense. Again, more on the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry and the future of that rivalry here a little bit later in the show. But as we look at this Michigan loss today for Ohio State, today being a few hours removed from them hoisting the hardware of being the best team in college football, mind you, I just want to make this clear. I don't think that there's somebody not named Ryan Day that could have won you those games, okay? Just my opinion. Now, could you say Urban Meyer, if he's still there? Sure, Urban Meyer's not an option. Okay, Mike Vrabel, again, hypothetically speaking, I don't think he puts the pieces together the way that Ryan Day does. So, as much as you're sour about the Michigan game, I would make sure you're as enthusiastic about the national title. Because now Ryan Day, I think, is operating in a situation where, as important as the Michigan game is, there needs to be some sort of amends between the Ohio State fan base and Ryan Day. Like, you don't need to forget the Michigan games, but you do have to forgive Ryan Day to some extent and acknowledge, hey, this dude just brought a national championship home to Ohio State. Like, yeah, the Michigan games suck, but, like, this dude just won the whole darn thing. Can we allow a little bit of credit for my guy? Can we give him some acknowledgement for that? Again, there's not a better option walking through the door. And so the conversation to me flips a little bit. I said this multiple times when the whole post-Michigan storm was going on. If I'm Ryan Day, I'm not so sure that I feel all that excited about coming back to Ohio State if we don't win the national championship. That's not me telling you I know anything. That's not me telling you I have intel or something like that. But I am saying now, Ryan Day just won a national championship for Ohio State. There needs to be a good relationship between him and the fan base. I'm not implying there's not, but I do think that the Michigan losses probably caused some damage. Now, if you lose to Michigan for the 5th time, yeah, we're going to have a discussion about it, and it's going to be bad vibes, and it'll be a storm in itself, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I don't think that's probably the case for Ryan Day here going forward, but I think that needs to be addressed a little bit. It's not a pick on the Michigan-Ohio State game. Settle down. I'm just saying I think that Ryan Day's earned a little bit more than that. So last thing I'll say about the DNA and Ryan Day to kind of put a bow on this, we talk about pressure with this job. The Michigan game in itself is probably a nice segue into that. For Ohio State, it felt like for a while there they weren't able to handle the pressure. And the same way I wonder how they're going to be able to build their roster here in the future with potentially more money and all those things, or at least an equal amount of resources. I can't help but feel a little bit like there could be some muscle memory here to overcoming pressure for Ryan Day and the rest of the staff. Like, sometimes all it takes is doing it right once. Right? Like, I'll talk about us at Media Days here. Media Days are weird. I don't mean to go down a rabbit hole here. We've talked about Ohio State for a while, but they are the national champs, so we don't apologize too much. Media Days are just a weird thing for us on our side of the camera because we're trying to get interviews, and it's kind of a middle school dance vibe where everyone's just standing around, and it's like, do you want to talk to Jeremiah Smith? Because he's just sort of standing there. There's no official invitation. Hey, Jeremiah, we'll see you now. It's like, if you want to go talk to Jeremiah Smith, you got to awkwardly walk up to my guy and say, hey, Jeremiah, you got a few minutes. And it's weird, it's awkward, it's clunky, but you got to do it. But once you ask for that first interview, the muscle memory's there, you're more comfortable, you kind of figure out how to do it. It's a roundabout way for me to tell you, again, at 3 in the morning here as we're recording this, that maybe Ohio State's got the muscle memory in the pressure pack situations now. Like, maybe that was all it took was to feel that pressure, feel like what it was like to succeed under that pressure, and now for them to be the national champs, I wonder how well that will serve them here going forward. I'm not implying that the Michigan game and all that is the same as playing for a national title, because I get they're different and the emotion's different, but I think there's something to be said there about growth for Ryan Day, because he's done it in every area, and I don't expect him to stop now. So how'd they do it? There's a lot of factors, but the way that he has continued to challenge everything, made pivots, got the results, I wonder now if, again, I'm assuming no lesser NIL funds to work with, Ryan Day, he's your guy. He's your guy until he says he's not, or until something else drastic happens here.